place at the moment.
Very good.
Not
Yeah.
entirely here.
No, I know. Otherwise you'll feel bad, guys, because the one is not that visible. But Dan's been great. He's helping me with the PEGASUS project. He's also been working with Natural England around issues of natural capital. But you're back home, middle of February. By the end of February, I'll be back up in front of students.
I will.
Teaching them about economics. He's from the University of Waikato, where he's environmental economist and working and you teach on there. So natural resource management programs. Yes. Okay, right. Well, Dan, over to you. Looking forward to hearing more about this.
Thanks very much for coming, and particular thanks to Chris and Janet and all at CCRI for making me feel very welcome and putting out the invitation quite some time ago, which was very useful in terms of persuading my university that my proposed sabbatical was something that they could support. So while I've been on sabbatical here in the UK, I've had been sort of three projects. The one that Chris has mentioned, and then I've been spending probably 2/3 of my time or so working with Natural England on a couple of projects. The main thing has been helping them to develop what we're calling a natural capital approach. Many things might fall under that heading. In the particular context of the pioneer projects. And the pioneer projects are 4 projects being implemented by Natural England and the Environment Agency, only just started. And they are intended to be one of the main vehicles for testing out new ideas to enable the government to reach its goal of improving the environment. In particular, they're supposed to be the main vehicles for the ideas which are going to be trialled in the new 25-year environment plan, which is to be released shortly. We've been told for some time it's to be released shortly. So anyway, I've been assisting on the pioneers, and certainly from my point of view, it's been very interesting to be involved in these discussions, both with Natural England and DEFRA. And I've been doing another little thing about offsetting with West of England Natural Capital Trust, which has sort of got some negatives. I've probably got way too much material. I should try and sort of make it fit approximately the right time. Please take this presentation. This is the first time that I've tried to present any of this stuff. On one level, it's a little bit daunting because I don't know how much everyone else knows, and I may actually get some things wrong. I'm probably not bound to get some things wrong. But at the same time, I think, I grew up in this country. I went to university here, but most of the last 20 years I've been in New Zealand. And I think, it does afford an opportunity to sort of come back to a place with sort of outsider's eyes and look in. So hopefully there'll be some things of interest. That's what it is. It's my musings of an outsider are fairly high level on what I've seen going on in this space. But just starting with a bit of an introduction. Natural capital, latest show in town. I mean, when I first arrived and they said they wanted before I arrived, they said they wanted me to work on natural capital, and I couldn't believe the sheer scale of things sort of going on in this space. Natural Capital Committee, Natural Capital Coalition, Natural Capital Trust, Natural Capital this, that, the other. I was going, I mean, partly that's a reflection of me coming from New Zealand, 4 million people, to UK, 60 million people. There's bound to be more going on, but also it does very much seem to be one of the latest flavours in town, at least in certain circles. Natural England, DEFRA, Environment Agency, and in the private sector too, had a little bit to do with that. But what is it? From my perspective, I expect you all know, but still I'm going to start at the beginning. What is natural capital? Well, if I look it up in the environmental economics textbook, which is one of the top undergrad environmental economics textbooks, it's been out since '84. I've been using it since the last 90s to teach environmental economics to undergraduates. It says that natural capital is the endowment of environmental and natural resources. from which you might say, well, what's new? Environmental economists have been thinking about our endowment of environmental and natural resources for a very long time, and thinking from a sort of an economist perspective how we could manage it better. And of course, environmental economists are far from the only people who have been thinking about these things. All the other people involved in thinking about the environment, whether from an environmental management perspective, sociology perspective, geography, all that with the different disciplines involved. But nonetheless, start from there, and then of course, one of the main sort of players in the UK in recent years has been the Natural Capital Committee, and they have been putting out a number of reports. And Dieter Helm, the chair of the committee, has written a book about natural capital, and they usefully use the same definition pretty well. It's the elements of nature that produce value to people. But they do come at it they do push a particular perspective, which is that if only we could do a better job of measuring it and valuing it, that this would lead to better decisions, and the better decisions would lead to a better environment, or something more like the environmental and natural resources that society would want. Of course, these concerns about natural resources are not new, even for economists. Couldn't resist just plugging this little one in. My own discipline, environmental economics, goes back perhaps to the 40s, depending on how you date it. I mean, this guy, Harold Hough-Talling, wrote a paper in the Journal of Political Economy in the 1930s, talking about concerns over disappearing minerals, disappearing forests, indeed actually talking about the fact that these products were too cheap. So concerns that actually this lack of, this difficulty of valuation was one of the main drivers. So in that sense, these concerns that we don't take proper account of the environment are not new to environmental economists, and I'm sure you all know that actually they date back to ancient times. I think it's also useful to put this notion of natural capital into the context of sustainable development. Funnily enough, in New Zealand, we're still perhaps just coming to the end of the sort of sustainability fact. Sustainability this, sustainability that, and sustainability everything. I've come here and it's now natural capital. New Zealand, we're sort of going from sustainability to ecosystem services. Maybe by the time I get back, it'll be all natural capital, and I'll be right at the forefront. But anyway, if we sort of put it in the sustainable development context, I've always really liked this figure, which actually comes from a report from UK's Department of Environment, Transport and the Regions in the late 90s. I've slightly cheated in that I've changed the names of the capitals. So down the bottom, that one used to be called environmental capital, and at the top, I think it probably said human and social capital, and I've added cultural because we've all got to have cultural capital in there these days. But I mean, the idea of this figure is to say that if we want sustainable development, we have to think about these different pots: economic capital, natural capital, human and social capital. And it's to point out that if we just look at GDP, that really all we're looking at is the flows between, say, human capital and economic capital, people working, jobs, people buying stuff. That's GDP really is just looking at that service flow there. Indeed, if we look at ecosystem services, we're just looking at the flows between natural capital and economic capital. In other words, natural capital provides some useful things to economic capital and provides some useful things to people. That's ecosystem services. But if we want to look at it from a sustainability perspective, we should be interested in how much and what quality we've got of all of these capitals and the flows. We should be doing a lot. And actually, that's one thing I've sort of noticed in this sort of current natural capital fad, is somehow it's all natural capital, and somehow people are almost forgetting about the rest. So actually, for a more sort of holistic interpretation, I'll come back to this and say this is a nice framework. And incidentally, that this diagram we just looked at gives us at least an environmental economist definition of what strong sustainability means. That strong sustainability means that our stock of natural capital is at least maintained. We only have sustainable development if our stock of natural capital is maintained. And that does, in fact, nicely link into what the government says its objective is of leaving the environment in a better state than that which this generation found it. And as an aside, it's got an interesting link into this other little project I've been involved in offsetting, that if actually instead of just offsetting you require biodiversity net gain, well that is also a sort of a link into this, all of those ideas of tying together as some way of driving the idea of improving our stock of natural capital. So I arrived here and I found this sort of huge interest and all this talk about natural capital. And I found that I can start as an academic and say, what does it mean? And put up some frameworks. But actually, in many ways, it's a slogan where actually people almost mean whatever they want it to mean. And so this slide is more sort of some of the things that actually people are saying under this natural capital slogan. So I've been going around some sort of fairly senior sort of meetings and policy discussions, which has been very interesting. And what are the kind of things I hear? What is natural capital about? It's about the business case for environmental spending. It's about how we're going to persuade businesses to spend more on the environment. It's about talking other people's language to get influence. That's people thinking that somehow, if instead of talking about the environment, we talk about natural capital, that somehow the accountants, financiers and policy people somehow think it's more important because it's called capital. As an aside, I'm actually sceptical, but nonetheless, this is certainly another one. That it's about leveraging funding. I've also heard that called innovative funding. A lot of talk about innovative funding. Because I'd only just arrived, I could ask what that meant, and I was told actually that means basically trying to pay for the environment when we haven't got any money, or trying to find someone else to pay for it. Anyway, so that was interesting. So it's about leveraging funding, innovative funding, experimenting with resource pooling. That's the idea of, instead of all these different agencies spending a bit of this, bit of that, bit of that, putting it all in one pot and working out all together what's the best way of spending this money. It's about natural capital projects that generate a return. And then people coming from a more bottom-up sort of participative approach, which, as an aside, I think is something that's quite missing in a lot of this, because it's policy-driven, saying actually, this can provide a common lens to enable different stakeholders to talk about their place and what they want to do with it. They can talk about their natural capital. But at the end of the day, it's apparently one of the big drivers is that what we really want is better decision making, and incidentally, better decision making is definitely going to appear as a sort of key message in the 25-year environment plan, at least so I'm told. That's not published yet. But if we were to sort of distill down from those sort of few quotes of what different people are saying about it, sort of distill down to perhaps a sort of what I'm hearing from government and Natural England and so forth about what are four drivers, then but perhaps we get these ones. And actually, this links in, of course, with what the Natural Capital Committee is saying. So the main drivers are improved decision making that takes full account of the value of our stocks of natural capital and the benefits we obtain from them, improved reporting on environmental outcomes, demonstrating the overall value delivered by environmental investments, and understanding the potential for, perhaps going beyond understanding the potential, finding ways of getting new markets, revenue streams, new ways of paying for maintenance and improvement of natural capital. And this seems to be the sort of four things that people out for, and yeah, we can look at those and say, and think, you know, to what extent there's anything new there. And as I said, you know, the sort of top thing that's listed is that it's all about better decision making. And so if you read, you know, sort of, if you open any of these Natural Capital Committee reports, it sort of starts off with a summary of, you know, what it's really about. And before long, you'll come to something along these lines. That natural capital is enormously important, but it's largely omitted from economic indicators and from corporate and government decisions, and as a consequence, resources are not being allocated efficiently, and that means that we're all worse off as a result. That sounds very familiar to me. I've been teaching this to my students for years. But I guess, I mean, I should be thrilled if actually somehow, you know, this message is to be got out to a wider audience and perhaps make some gains at the margin. That'd be great. I mean, incidentally, this is actually a very similar sort of message, but just couched in different language, to what you get when people are talking about the ecosystems approach and why we should adopt that. I mean, so this one is just extracted from a Natural England publication on, you know, what is the ecosystems approach and why should we do it. And really, I mean, it's couched in different language, but really it's the same thing. It talks about, you know, identifying benefits and value and building them into planning, decision making and management. It's a really similar message. But going sort of back up to sort of more higher level picture, this figure is from the Natural Capital Committee about their how all the different bits of how they see all the different bits of the jigsaw fitting together. You know, they see themselves as contributing to this task of how are we going to improve the environment, and they have all these different sort of bits of the jigsaw. You know, they've got foundations. We need to be measuring and monitoring changes in natural capital. This is all about the natural capital accounting. This is about improving cost-benefit analysis, and then stuff about outcomes, risk register, looking for investment options, right through the end. And interestingly, I think not many people seem to be taking a great deal of notice of the overall program at this stage. There seems to be a sort of an awful lot of focus on this, trying to do natural capital accounts, and a lot of, you know, there's development of the approach, so there's doing some pilots. I'll talk about some of the specific work that's been done, though necessarily briefly. I haven't heard much about improved cost-benefit analysis. And just from my impression from being here, I sort of see little evidence as to, I'm sort of puzzling over how this is going to lead to this, you know, which is, you know, what we actually need to improve the environment. Priority investment in natural capital, taking account of net benefits and assets at greatest risk. I mean, if we don't do this, how are we going to improve the environment? It's almost as if people are sort of saying, look, we're doing what's in the white paper, we're doing lots of this. Well, I mean, there's no point in this unless it feeds through to the point of it all. It's almost like the sort of people at some stage, people are perhaps losing track of the point of the whole thing. Or perhaps putting too much effort in here, considering the amount of resource we have. Okay, so I've been looking at, to me, again, from a New Zealand perspective, a very impressive amount of work being done in this space of natural capital accounting and so forth, and I've been reviewing some of it. And I'm just going to just jump in on a few very, very specific bits. So first there's this work which has been commissioned by the Natural Capital Committee about, it's called Corporate Natural Capital Accounting, where the idea initially was that, I mean, either a company or any kind of organisation that could sort of draw a specific boundary around a bit of natural capital could do such accounts. So I mean, it's been taken up by Forest Enterprise England, Duchy of Cornwall. They've done pilots on some particular farms, I think some natural trust properties, I have to check. So a number of these efforts have been done at the sort of bottom-up level, and at the top level, though with somewhat different methods, there's work being done by the Office of National Statistics to better include natural capital accounting data in the national accounts. And so the general sort of concept of all of this is to, on the one hand, that we have our natural capital, all our natural assets, natural capital, in this method, that typically they're then sort of dividing that up according to accounting units, and they've used the, what do they call that? Major habitat types? I can't remember. The same habitat types that they use in the National Ecosystem Assessment. You know, these mountains, moors, farmland, freshwater, whatever. And then we look at the services which are provided by these natural capital assets, and then to work out the benefits that we get from them. Obviously, of course, there is mention of these other capitals. You know, obviously, other capitals like economic capital, human capital, and so forth, to enable us to get these benefits. And you end up with quite a, and in terms of sort of overall concept, to me as not an accountant, people always think that economists and accountants are pretty well the same thing, but I've never really much understood accounting. You know, to me it actually looks quite complicated to anyone who's not trained as an accountant. But you know, it's got all these different elements. You need a natural capital asset register. You know, what natural capital have you got? You need a physical account of what it's producing. You've got a monetary account where they're trying to put a value on these things. They're looking at the cost of maintenance, and all this stuff feeds through. You get a natural capital balance sheet. What assets have you got, and what are the benefits, and you've got changes, so forth. So it's what the overall aim meets the kind of basic aims I was telling you about before. The overall aim is to have a better quantified picture of our natural capital assets, of the benefits that we get from them, of whether there's a change in our amount and quality of our natural capital, whether there's a change in the flows that we get from them, and so forth. And there's been a lot of work to try and apply this approach in different areas. I'll just sort of jump in on some sort of snapshots of, you know, some, what do you get? What do you actually in practice get when you start trying to do this? So this is an example of the natural capital asset register for Forest Enterprise England. So they've got, you know, they've got some forest all over the country. So imagine your task. You're trying to describe all of their assets. And of course, you know, immediate issue is, you know, what level of aggregation are you going to go for? Because I mean, you simply can't be too disaggregated. It will be simply too complicated, and you won't have the data. And yet, if you're too aggregated, it will be so sort of lumped together that it'll be meaningless. So, I mean, it's a very difficult task. As I go through this bit, I may come up as sort of rather critical. I'm not actually critical of the people who've been doing this work. I think given the task that they've been set, I think they've been doing a very good job. It's just that it's a very, 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 very difficult and data-intensive and data-requiring job for anyone to do. Anyway, so what have they got? They've got some areas of habitat. The area of woodland, the area of grass, and so forth. SSIs, they've looked for some indicators. We all know indicators, nothing new about that. Indicators on percentage in favourable condition, and then they've got some stuff about carbon stocks, and I haven't got the whole table, but you get the idea. They're trying to sort of quantify to the extent they can certain physical parameters, and they're also using some indicators, and they're calling this a natural capital.
So can I just ask you, is this as far as they've got? Is that sort of the latest?
This is what you would find in the pilot natural capital accounts, the report of pilot natural capital accounts for Forest Enterprise England.
Right, so you wouldn't find anything else on carbon? Carbon
I think there's some more carbon further down, which will come to. Yeah,
I'm surprised to see.
No, I haven't got the bottom of the table.
Yeah.
Yeah, this carbon there, that's only the carbon in the SSIs.
It's only in the SSIs, yeah.
Yes, that's not the carbon.
Condition is only to do with triple SIs and nothing else. Not the rest of their
I don't think.
answers.
Yeah, I don't want to get sort of.
No.
Yeah, but later on, one of the messages I'm going to sort of give is, because the whole exercise is so large,
Yeah.
and yet because the resource you're putting into it is quite small,
Yeah.
the sort of description you do is necessarily very partial.
And they're just using information they can get their hands on by the looks of it.
Basically, I think it's really it's the art of the possible.
Yeah.
I think I'm going to skip over this because I'm running out of time, but this is an example of a register for a farm. So those are the assets, and then this is again an example from the Forest Enterprise England one, where they've got a physical flow account, so they're trying to put some metrics on the physical flows, the ecosystem flows. Timber production, carbon 1.7 million, carbon sequestered 1.6, negative for bogs, carbon embodied in environmental goods, visitor numbers, plant production, blah, blah, blah. So they do this. And then they put values on the things that they can value. And so when you finally get to the sort of monetary count, what is the value of these assets and the flows coming from Forest Enterprise England, you get, and out of the total of the things that they managed to describe and managed to value, you find that 35% is from the carbon sequestration, and 63% is from the recreational. So 98% of the quantified annual benefits from the public forest estate are from recreation and carbon sequestration, according to this. And if you sort of look at the natural capital balance sheet, you see a few other things. For example, it tells you that the annual cost of maintaining the assets are 600 million, but if you look more closely, you discover that that actually doesn't mean a thing, because they simply assumed that the maintenance cost was 10% of the harvesting cost. So it was actually simply an assumption. It doesn't actually tell us anything. The net asset value is based on this expected value of the flows, which again is subject to all kinds of assumptions. You see a slight change in the natural capital asset value, but it's such a small change that it doesn't really tell you anything. And over time you wonder whether this sort of method is really going to be able to tell us about changes, which of course is one of the main reasons why we might be interested, that we want to track changes in the quantity and quality of our natural capital. So, very quick, but and then there's just having a look at another piece of work. So this wasn't done. So FTech had been doing this corporate natural capital accounting, but then another piece of work was commissioned where the idea was to follow a similar approach to try to value protected areas. And so they picked out 6 protected areas. I'll show you which ones they are in a minute. So that's like national parks, but also area of outstanding natural beauty and so forth. So the work was commissioned by DEFRA, done by AECOM, and it was basically to test out how do you do this accounting, and it was stated that this work would be to help with better decision making, help people do better resource management decisions. I'm out of time, so I'm going to flick across. And so you get a similar sort of issue in terms of what they're able to quantify and what they're able to value. And if you flick through to what they've actually valued, this is the aggregate ecosystem service values. Obviously, only for those things they quantify at value. Across the 6 protected areas, so different colours, add them all up, and you see a strange thing. So looking at what this should be sort of telling us about the social value of protected areas. So looking at this, the value that they're finding from these things is air quality is number 1. I'll come back to that in a minute, in case you don't know how widely people are aware. Climate regulation, in other words, carbon sequestration next, and recreation, well, we all know that, and a bit of drinking water, as in the value of water, that water extraction by water companies. And if you actually then sort of look at it all, you find that 98% of the quantified annual benefits are from PM10 absorption, I'll come back to that, carbon sequestration, recreation and water supply. And the biggest is claimed to be from PM10 absorption. So this is the idea, I believe there's that PM10 particles are absorbed in these areas. Apparently there's some model, and there's some model of health benefits. Though as an aside, someone else told me that they reckon there was an error in this and the figure was way too high.
What's PM10?
PM10 is the small particles you particularly get from diesel engines. So put it into simple language, plain language, we're saying that the sort of, this might be interpreted by some people as the main benefit that we get from protected areas is that they absorb particles, the diesel particles, thus reducing the extent to which people get sick from the resulting respiratory diseases.
It's 10 micron, is that what it is? It's the size of the particle, 10, isn't it?
I'm an economist, not a scientist.
Yeah,
I
think it's 10
but they're small,
microns.
they're very small, yeah.
But particulate matter, less than 10 microns.
Yes, yeah. 10 something, wasn't it? And there's been a lot of this kind of work, big effort, doing this kind of stuff. Work on incorporating natural capital into the international accounts, piloting, there's an environmental lookup tool, and there's an outdoor recreation evaluation tool. I think that one's quite good actually. I mean, have you seen this Orville tool? It's quite cool. You can just fire up Orville. I suppose the reason I'm pointing to it is this one I think is actually, used correctly, reasonably useful. They've got models as to where people actually go to recreate, and you've sort of got models as to, you've got assumptions about what sort of value you could put on it. You can click on any area of the country and you can do little things like, say, if I put a wood here, how many people might go and what recreational benefit would you put on that? It's interesting. Go to Orville.
It values it?
Yes.
Is it hedonic pricing? Is it travel
Yes, it's based on travel costs.
It's based on travel costs.
Yeah, multi-purpose
Yeah.
travel costs.
Yeah.
Non-name
So it's building on the Forestry Commission's earlier work.
You can go back to the technical report and see what all the assumptions are. 5 minutes. Yeah, I knew this would happen, but okay. So what do I make of this all? Thinking about this sort of, all this effort that's being put into corporate natural capital accounting, and I'm thinking particularly about these big exercises of trying to do it for the public forest estate and doing it for the protected areas. You know, will it assist decision makers? Well, maybe it could eventually, but I don't see much sign of that sort of at the moment. You have to question whether it's really telling us anything new. I mean, if I'd been given the job to say, well, you know, what is the main, tell us what the main sort of value society of the public forestry estate is, and I mean, I could just jot back down on the back of an envelope that it was sort of recreation and carbon and so forth. And actually, we could go and describe all the other things that we know that society values them for. And indeed, in the case of the public forest estate, I mean, we didn't need that to tell us that most of these benefits are externalities, that they're sort of side effects of forest production activity. And in the case of the protected areas work, I really think that the biggest danger was that the whole thing was sort of a red herring and misleading. I mean, if some policymaker really started thinking the main value of our protected areas was that it absorbed diesel particles, I mean, what if we actually managed to persuade them all to switch to LPG? I mean, will our protected areas have then been sort of have lost more than half of their value? I mean, it may seem strange to you that an environmental economist who is specialised in non-market valuation is being so scornful of these valuation efforts, but to me, you know, it's horses for courses. You know, these things are useful, but they've got to be used correctly and sort of reasonably. And indeed, in this report, you know, they do say that one of the things that they definitely sort of haven't been able to do was to make estimates at a sufficiently accurate level that they could detect trends, that they could detect changes. And yet that was the whole point of it. One of the things that sort of worries me about the whole process, at least that I've seen, maybe just because I've been going around to meetings of DEFRA and Natural England and so forth, is it seems to be very much sort of top-down. And to me, I mean, by all means, it can be useful to have some sort of top-down technical analysis, if it is useful, not if it's this P10 stuff, giving us nice spatial maps of our natural capital assets, and if there is good stuff about the quality of it and all of that. But surely the next process has to be a process of involving local communities and stakeholders in identifying priorities. And this bit seems to have been rather forgotten at the moment. I've been sort of saying this at several meetings and saying that this is all great, but we need a prioritisation process, and we need a prioritisation process that's driven by local preferences and local stakeholders. And I've been trying to push them off down this particular setup that I'm familiar with. I don't suppose I'm having much success, but anyway, it's called the Investment Framework for Environmental Resources, and it's very much a far more sort of pragmatic approach of making do with the data that we've got and getting on and working with communities to identify priorities. And I've been sort of pushing the view that there's a sort of a huge amount of data being collected without thinking about what are the kind of decisions that we actually need to take. And so in many ways it sort of seems like wasted effort, because we simply can't, we never will have the resource to describe all of these assets and value all of these assets. It's really difficult and really time consuming. What we really need is better data and information analysis that relates to the sort of decisions that we're actually likely to take. I went down to a field trip, which was really interesting, and we were we visited a sand dune, and the discussion was all about how could we apply the natural capital approach to this sand dune. A discussion about, well, how could we map the asset, and how could we value the asset, and how could we work out what the ecosystem service flows were, and going through all this. But when it came down to it, it turned out that we were only talking about one management decision. The decision was, should we take steps to prevent this becoming a vegetated sand dune? Should we actually do management actions to open up the dune so that it was an active dune? It seems like people are really overcomplicating things. I mean, we could be doing a simple analysis. Shall we do steps to open up the dune or not? What are the costs and benefits? We don't really need this whole sort of natural capital accounting to do that. I went to a presentation about all kinds of fancy work that has been done to interpret data coming from the Sentinel satellites. It's fantastic work, really interesting. But when I said, would you be able to tell us, using this satellite data, whether there's been a change in, say, the area of species-rich grassland, over a 5-year period in a catchment? And the answer was, don't know. So like, to me, actually, when you design the project, you say, well, this project is useful if it can do that sort of thing, because that's actually the point of it. The point of all this is that we could track changes, and these are the kind of changes we'd actually need to usefully track. But it was like, right, so I've got to stop. That's all fine. Doing other stuff, and prioritization. There we are. So, wrap up. So just sort of adding it all up. Not sure how I've come across in terms of how critical or whatever, but trying to sort of put my overall view down. I think, this natural capital approach, it could be good. I mean, it should be good that these sort of senior decision makers seem to be more interested in natural capital, if they really are. So the natural capital approach, could be good if it really does lead to some better decision making, better reporting, and all of these things, and especially if that leads to what we're really aiming for at the end. Priority investments in natural capital. And I think the main thing I'm going to push, and I didn't try this with DEFRA, is that whereas they've got all this data collection sort of leading to prioritization and leading to this, the trouble is there's such a huge effort required here that they actually need to prioritize here. Otherwise, someone won't get there. So that's me.
Lovely. Thank you very much.